The Last of Us deserves its hype. I was really wrong in my initial impressions of the game, and after having just beaten it for the second time in 2 days, I still feel the need to make a new save file and start all over again. There's something weirdly gripping about the world and its characters. In 2016, Neil Druckmann, the director, said The Last of Us was a game about love. I had never played it before, but hearing that was a part of what got me interested. At first, I thought the sounds of zombie apocalypse, but with uncharted shooting mechanics, sounded like a way I would torture my enemies, should I ever reach Joel's level of mostly justified cruelty.
Fuck you, man. He told you what you wanted. I ain't telling you shit.
That's all right. I believe it.
No, wait!
Additionally attractive was how popular the game is. It seems universally loved, even by the people who have already pre-decided they're going to hate the second one. It gets brought up all the time when mentioning PlayStation exclusives, useful companion AI, and character relationships in games. So, super hyped up survival adventure with zombies, and it's about love. That's a lot to live up to. Upon starting a new game, the player sees a pleasant interaction between father and daughter. Then you're given control of the little girl. Then, the fungal apocalypse happens. This was one of the most well-done, intense, and just generally perfect sequences I've ever played in a game. It was striking, horrific, impressive, and gorgeous all at once. I mean, I saw 4 real working mirrors. Just wow, man. Mirrors in games never reflect shit. Tragically, the young father loses his daughter. I know, what a thing to do to people in the first 15 minutes. The main playable character for the vast majority of the game is the now 20 years older Joel, but don't judge this book by its flannel beard cover. He's a richly developed, intelligently realized, and brilliantly acted protagonist. Ellie, your most common companion, is just as realistic, nuanced, and again, I cannot overstate this, beautifully acted. Troy Baker always slays, but I'd say this is his best performance ever, or at least my favorite. That being said, I still think Ashley Johnson steals the show.
I shot the hell out of that guy, huh?
How they made a companion AI so non-intrusive, unless I need to get past her in a hallway, is beyond my understanding. It's the game design, the subtle animations and expressions, but it's also a lot of the writing and performance. There's so many little and big moments throughout the game where she shines so brightly in a very Bakugo, never stop hating you sort of a way. The 2 leads tend to get all the attention, and they deserve it, but the side characters are also very notable. I won't be forgetting Henry and Sam anytime soon. Also, look, I could have sworn I saved him. The hell, man? What else could I do? And Nolan North is exceptional in his unrecognizable portrayal of the carnivorous David. The dialogue helps a lot in fleshing out the world. Most of it's believable or sounds like exactly what you would say if you were in that situation. Or, at its most brilliant, the dialogue subverts your expectations and a character says something on par with or even beyond the player's understanding.
He ain't even hurt.
The good news doesn't end there. We're in the middle of the best zombie apocalypse there is, and unfortunately, these zombies are alive, and possibly still in there fighting it. Gonna try not to think about that. The cordyceps spores idea is a pretty good one, and they use it to its fullest, most video gamey potential, but that's not all. They treat this outbreak of a deadly supervirus better and more realistically than even our most beloved of Resident Evils. Sometimes maybe a little bit too realistically. Having a global pandemic scare in the real world to compare it to now, I can say this is exactly how humanity would behave if the shit did indeed go down to the extent that it does here. I found a strong trend of quarantine and or societal breakdown analogies that I don't want to get into because it's largely insulting to both of our current political cults. This adds a lot of grounding and tangibility to not just the environments, but everything that takes place within it. The vibe of this game isn't just a dreary zombie apocalypse, it's our world, just plus infected. As much as the environmental storytelling, the beautiful backdrops, and well-conceived setting build up an emotionally evocative experience, I think a lot of what makes those loud moments hit so hard and the sad moments hurt so much is how quiet and understated the unique score is. If it's there at all. It's also often guitar-based and less orchestral than the tunes we're all used to shooting things to. I don't want to go any further without mentioning how impressed and surprised by the environments in this game I was. Having played Uncharted 1 and 2, I wasn't disappointed by the linearity. I went in expecting way more of it. By comparison, I found this game to contain a lot of large spaces, areas with multiple paths through them, and eons more diversity than I expected. I had seen Ellie in the snow before, so at least in terms of weather, I expected that, but I never expected fall in Jackson County to be so very Seattle. I have expected Joel to start singing Under the Bridge. I love rain in games, and forests, and this is just so much of both of those things. Everywhere we went seemed like it had a lot of beauty to it, and felt like a living, breathing world, which is ironic considering the aforementioned linearity and how little of what you see in the distance is actually explorable. Sunsets, weather, and other events you might have become accustomed to happening organically in real time are more deliberately chosen here. I don't feel like that's a bad thing though. Ellie and Joel's journey across America was just very well curated in almost every way. It's a very visually pleasing trip throughout. I wanted to just walk around as slowly as possible, soaking it all in and marveling at how good this looks for a remastered PS3 game. So long as you're not indoors, then it's kind of always hideous. But even then, it's gross because it would be gross. Bedrooms look like bedrooms, houses look like houses, and that commitment to realism adds a lot to immersion, and the player's commitment to the game. The world also feels like it's never empty because it isn't. I think I mentioned earlier the enemies in this game are very much alive, whether they be the malignant infected or the malevolent man in all his post-apocalyptic glory. If movies, video games, and television have taught me any one thing, it's this. There will be dozens of disposable dudes just eating shit left and right. Both types of enemies offer different sorts of challenges and require different methods of vital termination. Joel can strangle enemies, and by the way, I love that they call it a strangle because it is, even though we refer to it as an RNC. I also want him to turn his hand behind the head the right way so bad. Also, dudes just seem to die when they go out, whereas in real life they would snore, probably loud as fuck, and then convulse a little and wake up in like 30 seconds maximum, unless that 5 seconds is actually representative of like 2 minutes, or I guess he's snapping their neck somehow? I don't know. You can also still strangle the lowest tier of infected enemy, adding to the stealth mechanics and thus options available. This is because the runners, as they're called, haven't been infected long enough to truly become dangerous in small numbers the way a group of clickers might be, for example. As the infected grow more and more mushroom face, they slowly become more resilient to damage, but slower and less functional optically and vocally, leading to them making horrific clicking and or screeching noises instead of the groans and whimpers you can expect from your less fungal of foes. AI is really impressive and sometimes very realistic, both because of the dialogue the humans so often utter and the way they react to players' last known location. However, sometimes all enemies form a hive mind and telepathically hone in on your location, either because someone saw you for a split second before their death, or sometimes seemingly for no reason at all. For example, there was this one time I keep thinking about where I threw a bottle or a brick to distract an enemy, so one dude nearby reacted and went to go check on it, while everyone else on screen stopped and stared directly at my hidden character. That staring directly at you, waiting exactly where you need to be next, and knowing where you are omnisciently before acting shocked and surprised to have found you actually happens somewhat frequently. Sometimes leading to entire encounters just feeling bad. Even after my second playthrough, I still hated the hospital sequence at the end, even knowing where to go. That unfortunately wasn't the only thing I flat out hated. Certain aspects of this game seem intentionally sabotaged. Like they made some puzzles, if you could call anything in this game that, a boring, horrible slog, or forced you into overly drawn out encounters just to make you deplete all your resources, all seemingly on purpose. Combine that with the robotic, sadistically placed enemies, and you have a recipe for sadness. I also hated the shit out of that encounter with David in the restaurant, or at least that last third of it, where he hides a lot with his back to a corner and he's surrounded by glass to step on. The shooting doesn't feel great, but it's a lot better than I initially thought thanks to upgrading weapon sway. Who would have thought? Upgrading aiming will make aiming suck less. Still sucks a little though. While I do feel the aiming is a bit weaker, the melee combat is pretty good, at least one-on-one as it should be. You're probably not killing two grown men who have both done this before and are trying to kill you by just running up and punching their faces off. I mean, Joel does it anyway, but I appreciate that you weren't supposed to. The focus seems to be on those stealth mechanics, which I loved, and the bat vision both playable characters display. Being able to hear enemy sounds, break line of sight, and then hide so you can sneak up and give them the old scissors to the brain routine is dope. I also love the stun mechanic with bricks and bottles, which I need to be able to carry more than one of. Overall, in terms of combat, you have far more options available at any given time than in most third-person shooters, and if there's one thing I appreciate in a game with stealth murder, it's variety. As much as I love the hurt and things parts, I enjoyed the quiet in-between sections far more. This game reminded me a lot of Fallout 3 in some ways. The way sometimes you might not see anything or anyone for a while, you just semi-peacefully explore and scavenge treasures. This helps the pacing a lot and feels like a natural way for the game to tell you to just slow down and be in this place with these people. I'd go as far as to say these were my favorite parts of the game. They never felt like filler in the way that the puzzles and winding, inefficient pathways sometimes do. But I went into this game now in 2020 having heard the gameplay isn't great for years, so once again I was mostly just impressed when I did like things about it as opposed to disappointed when I didn't. And again, I had assumed it was just generic Walking Dead Season 4 type garbage. Loved the first three, don't get me wrong. Until I heard what the director said, something I believe very firmly to be true. This is a game about love. That and how angry the comment sections across the internet are over the Part 2 leaks. For you to hate so strongly, you must have really liked something about the first game. That now classic story is the selling point of The Last of Us. I don't recommend everyone play this game because of its mechanics or pretty graphics. I would recommend everyone who enjoys good storytelling play this game and experience these events in a way that only playing a game controller in hand can deliver. You can't experience a game by just watching the cutscenes, reading a plot summary, or listening to a spoiler-filled review on some goblin-faced weirdo's YouTube channel. That's me, I'm the weirdo. You have to be the character, go through the experience the way the artists behind the epic intended. I felt that pretty strongly about Death Stranding, but I feel it way more so for The Last of Us. If you don't really feel like the character, hell, even if you just have trouble sympathizing with the character, I think you would lose a tremendous amount of crucial context. I don't even have a kid, but just having a nephew, I know I would do exactly the same thing that Joel does for Ellie for him. I wouldn't be able to. I would be shot into a mesh film of bones and blood, but I know without any doubt that I would try. And if you're a father or mother, I know you would too. Basically, Ellie is infected with the Doom Shroom, and to cut it out of her brain would kill her. However, because of her immunity to the virus, they believe she's the only potential chance for a vaccine. The entire game, everyone you've lost, everyone who has sacrificed themselves, and everything that everyone involved lost along the way has all been to transport Ellie to that operating table. This is the entire driving force behind the incredible determination shared by Joel and Ellie, not just to survive, but to stop this for everyone once and for all, to save the world. Ellie doesn't know that she'll die from the procedure, but admittedly, I think she would agree to it anyway, for the greater good and the future of mankind. She pretty much makes that clear at the end with her last talk to Joel.
I'm still waiting for my turn.
Ellie.
Her name was Riley, and she was the first to die. And then it was Tess. And then Sam.
None of that is on you.
Now, the truth behind the fatal nature of creating that cure was also hidden to Joel the entire time, and unfortunately for all mankind, he doesn't exactly take the news well. I cannot imagine what losing a child would do to a person, and Joel never truly got over his daughter's death, not that anyone ever could. And while Ellie certainly doesn't replace her, you can tell he still cares for her like a daughter. Now, if this was just about logic and reason, then the right thing to do is to let the kid die. Needs of the many and whatnot, the greater good. Give millions of other kids a real fighting chance to not get eaten by a fungus person. But this isn't a story about logic. The Last of Us is about love. And so, out of that love, Joel goes on his second most badass rampage of the whole game.
I ain't got time for this.
He makes it to that operating table, and based on the player's actions, may kill all or only one of the doctors attempting to save humanity. He finally rushes out of the hospital, girl in arms, and makes one final decision before finally driving away.
Wait! Let me go. Please.
You just come after her.
I beyond loved this ending. I adored it. I ultimately knew he was going to save Ellie. I knew it was going to be bloody. I just had no idea it was going to go down like that. It left such an impression on me, I started a New Game Plus immediately after the credits, and everything, especially combat and enemy disposal, was far more enjoyable the second time. As a whole, I really loved this game. It's nowhere near perfect, but it's an incredible, remarkably well-made cross-country road trip / mushroom zombie apocalypse, and I have nothing but hope for the future. Not a lot of hope, because I've played sequels before, but it's in there somewhere. Again, and I know I keep bringing it up, but it was in my head throughout every scene the whole way through. The Last of Us Part 1 is about love, and according to that same quote, Part 2 is going to be about hate. And that sounds equal parts exciting and like it's going to be a goddamn cry fest, but I survived the opening of this game, it can't be any worse. Right? Right? Guys? I would be honored if this video convinced anyone to give Part 1 a try before diving into Part 2, or just to enjoy it as its own isolated experience. However, games like this need to be played at the right time in your life. I tried to play it around 6 months ago or so, and I didn't like it at all. I was really into the cutscenes, I just didn't want to play it. I needed to be in the mood to sneak around, sweat profusely from my hands, and play that fucking hospital sequence for 45 minutes that I will never get back. And I couldn't be happier I did. I might even start a third game when I'm finally done this video. If that ever happens. One thing's for sure, people are going to remember this story for a long time. God of War isn't the only game that's been influenced by this or will be in the future. I'm very excited for Part 2 and hopefully to do a video about that game one day in the near future. Thank you so much for watching, I genuinely appreciate any of your time, and I wish you nothing but the best in any future fungal apocalypse. P.S. Next week, if nothing horrible happens, I intend to do one of these for the Left Behind DLC, so please consider coming back for that maybe? Also, if there's anything I need to improve on, please let me know. I'm still fairly new to this, and I just want to get better. It won't hurt my feelings, I promise. And again, thanks.
No!